I can still see the way my daughter's hands shook as she held up her phone, her voice trembling as she tried to sound brave. Have you ever wondered what you would do if the people you trusted most with your child's safety turned out to be the ones who hurt her the most that moment? When you realize your own family could look at your child's pain and simply walk away is something you never forget. Would you stay silent, or would you finally draw a line that can never be crossed again? Before I dive into my story, I'd really appreciate it if you could let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me and help me keep sharing more stories like this. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rachel, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the quiet observer in my own family. I was the child who learned to read the room before I ever learned to read a book. The one who could sense a storm brewing in my mother's voice, or the way my brother David slammed the door. My mother, Evelyn, was a woman who believed that emotions were best left unspoken, that tears were a sign of weakness, and the children should be seen and not heard. My father, George, was quieter, but his silence was a wall, not a comfort. David, 2 years younger than me, was the golden boy, athletic, charming, always the center of attention at family gatherings. I was the one who faded into the background, the one who learned to make herself small. I grew up in a house where the rules were clear: don't make a fuss, don't draw attention, and above all, don't embarrass the family. I learned early that my feelings were inconvenient, that my fears were something to be mocked or dismissed. When I was 8, I broke my arm falling off the monkey bars at school. I remember running home, cradling my arm, tears streaming down my face. My mother took one look at me and said, "You're fine now, Rachel. Don't be so dramatic." She made me finish my homework before she would even consider taking me to the doctor. By the time we got to the clinic, the bone had already started to swell, and the nurse gave my mother a look I'll never forget. But nothing changed. If anything, it taught me to hide my pain better. As I got older, I learned to keep my head down, to do well in school, to avoid conflict. I watched as David was celebrated for every little achievement, while my own successes were met with a nod or a distracted, "That's nice, dear." I stopped trying to win their approval. Instead, I poured myself into my studies, into books and music and anything that made me feel alive. I left home for college as soon as I could, choosing a university on the other side of the country. I thought distance would make things easier, but the ache of being unseen followed me. I met my husband, Mark, in college. He was kind, patient, and saw me in a way no one else ever had. We built a life together, one filled with laughter and quiet moments, and eventually, our daughter, Emily. From the moment she was born, I promised myself that she would never feel the way I had felt growing up. I would listen to her, believe her, and protect her, no matter what. Emily was a gentle child, thoughtful and curious, with a quiet strength that reminded me of myself, but without the fear. She loved to read, to draw, to ask questions about the world. She was sensitive, yes, but in the best way attuned to the feelings of others, quick to comfort a friend or offer a kind word. I watched her grow, determined to nurture that sensitivity, to show her that it was a gift, not a flaw. My relationship with my parents remained distant. We spoke on holidays, exchanged polite texts, but the old patterns lingered. My mother still found ways to criticize, to remind me that I was never quite enough. David, now married with 2 children of his own, had become even more the center of the family. His wife, Lisa, was loud and opinionated, always ready with a joke at someone else's expense. Their children, Ben and Haley, were close in age to Emily, and my mother loved to compare them, always finding ways to make Emily seem less outgoing, less athletic, less fun. When Emily was 15, my parents invited her to join them, David, Lisa, and the cousins, on a spring break trip to the East Coast. They planned to visit museums, historical sites, and spend time together as a family. Mark and I couldn't go, he had a work conference, and I had a deadline at the office. Besides, I hadn't flown in years. The thought of getting on a plane filled me with dread, a leftover from a panic attack I'd had in an airport years before. Emily begged to go, promising to call every night and send pictures. My mother assured me they would take good care of her. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I packed Emily's suitcase myself, making sure she had everything she might need: her allergy medicine, a first aid kit, snacks, a book for the plane. I slipped a note into her bag. "I love you. Call me if you need anything." I hugged her tight at the airport, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. As I watched her walk away with my parents, I told myself she would be fine. She was with family, after all. The first few days of the trip seemed to go well. Emily sent photos of the group at a colonial village, of Ben and Haley posing with a costumed actor, of Lisa making a silly face in front of a statue. She called each night, her voice bright, telling me about the places they'd visited and the food they'd tried. I felt a small measure of relief, thinking maybe, just maybe, things had changed. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, everything shifted. I was at my desk, lost in a spreadsheet, when my phone buzzed with a FaceTime call from Emily. I answered, expecting to see her smiling face, but instead she looked pale and anxious. She didn't say hello. She just turned the camera down, and I saw her legs swollen, bruised, the skin stretched tight and angry. My heart dropped. "Mom," she whispered, "I think something's really wrong with my leg." I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hands were already shaking. "What happened?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if she was afraid someone might hear. "I fell yesterday, at the museum. Aunt Lisa pushed me. She said it was just a joke, but I missed a step and landed hard. It hurt, but they said I was being dramatic. Grandma told me to walk it off. Uncle David said I was slowing everyone down." I could feel the old anger rising in my chest, the same anger I'd swallowed for years. Did anyone look at it? Did they take you to a doctor? She shook her head. "No." We kept going. I walked for hours. "It hurts so much now. Mom, they all went out to dinner. I'm alone in the hotel." I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to scream. I remembered all the times I'd been told to toughen up, to stop making a scene, to be less of a burden. I remembered the way my mother's voice could cut through me, sharp and dismissive, and the way David would roll his eyes whenever I tried to speak up for myself. I had promised myself that Emily would never have to feel that way, that I would always believe her, always protect her, protectee. I told her to stay put, to keep her leg elevated, and that I was coming to get her. She looked at me through the screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But you'd have to fly. Mom, you can't." "I can," I said more to myself than to her. "I will." I hung up and booked the first flight I could find, my hands moving on autopilot. I called my mother, but she didn't answer. I called David, and when he finally picked up, his voice was light, almost cheerful. I told him what Emily had said, and he laughed. "She's always been sensitive. Rachel, you know how she is. She just wants attention." I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and left the office without looking back. My boss tried to stop me, but I barely heard him. The drive to the airport was a blur, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I kept seeing Emily's face, the way she tried to be brave, the way she apologized for being a problem. The airport was a maze of noise and movement, and every step felt like a test. My palms were slick with sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. I kept thinking about that old family photo, the one where I stood on the edge, half smiling, half hoping someone would notice if I disappeared. I thought about all the times I'd been left behind, all the times I'd been told to get over it, to stop being so emotional. I boarded the plane, my body tense and rigid, every muscle screaming to turn back. but I didn't. I sat through the turbulence, through the announcements, through the endless wait for the seatbelt sign to turn off. I stared straight ahead, willing myself not to cry, not to panic, not to let the fear win. I thought about Emily, alone in that hotel room, and I knew I would do anything to get to her. When I finally arrived, it was late. The hotel hallway was quiet, the carpet worn thin in places. I knocked on the door, and Emily opened it herself, leaning heavily on the frame. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair tangled, her pajamas wrinkled. She smiled when she saw me, a tired, grateful smile that broke my heart. "You really came?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hugged her gently, careful not to touch her leg. "Of course I came. You're the only reason I'd ever get on a plane." We sat together on the bed, and I asked her to tell me everything. She hesitated, glancing at the door as if she was afraid someone might overhear. Aunt Lisa pushed me. "Mom." She said it was just a joke, but I fell hard. I tried not to cry, but it hurt so much. Grandma said I was being dramatic. Uncle David told me to stop scaring the tourists. They all saw it, but no one helped me up. I walked for hours. I didn't want to ruin the trip. A cold, familiar rage settled in my chest. I remembered the way my mother used to say the same things to me, the way David would laugh when I cried, the way I learned to hide my pain so I wouldn't be a burden. I looked at Emily, and I saw myself at her age, quiet, careful, always trying not to take up too much space. I helped her put on her shoes, one at a time, wincing as she tried to stand. We made our way to the emergency room, the city lights blurring past the taxi window. The hospital was bright and cold, the air thick with antiseptic and worry. The nurse took one look at Emily's leg and ushered us to the front of the line. The doctor ordered x-rays, his face growing more serious with each passing minute. He came back with the results, holding the films up to the light. "It's a fracture," he said. "Non-displaced, but definitely broken. If she had walked much more on this, it could have shifted. She's lucky." I nodded, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I looked at Emily, and I saw the relief in her eyes, the way she finally let herself believe that the pain was real, that someone believed her. The nurse asked her what happened, and Emily looked at me, then back at the nurse. My aunt pushed me. I fell down the stairs. They told me to keep walking. The nurse's pen moved faster, her eyes flicking to me with a look of concern. I thanked her, and when she left, I turned to Emily. "You did the right thing, Em. You told the truth." We spent the night in the hospital, the beeping of machines and the soft murmur of voices lulling us into a restless sleep. In the morning, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight and defensive. I told her about the fracture, about the doctor's warning, about the hours Emily had spent walking on a broken leg. She sighed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "It didn't look that bad. Rachel, you're overreacting, as usual. You always make things bigger than they are." I felt the old shame rise up, the urge to apologize, to make myself smaller. But I didn't. Not this time. "I'm pressing charges," I said, my voice steady. "This isn't just about Emily. This is about all the times you ignored me, all the times you told me to get over it. I'm done." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then she hung up. Back at the hotel, Emily was quiet, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. I sat beside her, holding her hand, and for the first time I felt the weight of all the years I had spent trying to earn my family's approval lift from my shoulders. I didn't need their permission to protect my daughter. I didn't need their validation to know that what happened was wrong. A few days later, the footage from the museum arrived. It showed Emily standing at the top of the stairs, her camera in hand, Lisa behind her, laughing. Lisa gave her a playful shove, and Emily stumbled, missing a step and crashing to the ground. The rest of the family stood nearby, watching, not one of them moving to help. I sent the video to my lawyer, who called me within the hour. "We have enough," she said. "Let's move forward." The next weeks were a blur of court dates, paperwork, and difficult conversations. My mother called, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "You're tearing this family apart. Rachel, how could you do this to us?" I listened, but I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say. David showed up at my door, his face red with frustration. "You're gonna ruin everything. You know that." "Right. You're gonna destroy us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy he used to be, the one who always got away with everything, the one who never had to say he was sorry. "You did that yourselves," I said quietly. "You left Emily alone. You left me alone, too." The legal process was slow and exhausting. There were meetings with lawyers, phone calls with social workers, and endless forms to fill out. I had to recount what happened over and over, each time feeling the sting of disbelief in the questions. "Are you sure it was intentional? Did your daughter really say she was pushed?" I sent them the video, the x-rays, the hospital report. Each piece of evidence was a small victory, a way to prove that Emily's pain and mine was real. Emily was quieter during those weeks, but not withdrawn. She watched me closely, as if trying to understand what it meant to stand up for yourself, to refuse to be silenced. Sometimes, I would find her sitting on her bed, tracing the scar on her leg with her finger, lost in thought. I tried to give her space, but I also made sure she knew I was there. We spent evenings together, reading or watching old movies, letting the world outside shrink to just the two of us. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the school district where David worked. It was addressed to me, but inside was a copy of the disciplinary action taken against him. He had been suspended pending the outcome of the case. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of justice. For years, David had been protected by the family, his mistakes brushed aside, his cruelty excused as just being a boy. Now, for the first time, there were consequences. My parents called less and less. When they did, it was always the same pleading, bargaining, sometimes threatening. My mother left a voicemail one night, her voice thick with tears. "Rachel, please. We're your parents. We made a mistake, but you can't do this to us. Think of the family. Think of your father's health." I listened to the message twice, then deleted it. I had spent my whole life thinking of the family. Now, I was thinking of Emily. The court hearings were quiet affairs, nothing like the dramatic scenes you see on television. There were no raised voices, no slamming of fists on tables, just lawyers trading documents, a judge asking questions, and my family sitting on the other side of the room, refusing to meet my eyes. Emily testified, her voice steady as she described what happened. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for sympathy. She just told the truth. The verdict came on a rainy Thursday morning. The judge found my mother, David, and Lisa guilty of child endangerment and medical neglect. There was no jail time, but the fines were steep, and the record would follow them. David lost his job. My parents had to move out of their house, and downsizing to a small apartment in a part of town they used to avoid. I heard from a cousin that they were struggling to pay rent, that my mother was asking for help from anyone who would listen. But she never called me again. Emily's recovery was slow but steady. Physical therapy sessions became a routine, and with each week, she grew stronger. She started drawing again, filling her sketchbook with images of girls standing tall, unafraid, their faces turned toward the sun. One evening, as we folded laundry together, she looked at me and said, "I think I would have just let it go, Mom, but I'm glad you didn't." Her words stayed with me, a quiet affirmation that I had done the right thing. The fallout from the case rippled through the family. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, some offering support, others demanding explanations. My aunt called to say she was disappointed in me, that I had broken the family apart. I listened. then hung up. I was done explaining myself. I was done apologizing for protecting my child. Emily received a message from Ben, her cousin, a few weeks after the verdict. "I'm sorry for what happened. I shouldn't have laughed. I hope you're okay." She showed me the message, her face unreadable. "Do you believe him?" I asked. She shrugged. "I think so. I don't think anyone told him to say it." I nodded, trusting her judgment. We settled into a new routine, one that didn't include my parents or David or Lisa. Holidays were quieter, but also more peaceful. Emily and I started new traditions, baking cookies on Christmas Eve, taking long walks on Thanksgiving morning, watching the sunrise on New Year's Day. The silence that had once felt suffocating now felt like freedom. Sometimes I would catch Emily looking at the old family photo on the mantel, the one where I stood on the edge, half in, half out. One night, she asked, "Do you think they ever really saw us?" Mom, I thought about it for a long moment, then shook my head. "No, I don't. But that doesn't matter anymore. We see each other. That's enough." I still hated flying, but I did it anyway. For work, for a quick trip with Emily to celebrate her recovery, for the simple act of proving to myself that I could. Each time my palms would sweat, my heart would race, but I would board the plane, sit by the window, and watch the world fall away beneath me. I thought about fear, about how it can shrink your world if you let it, about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take the first step, even if your voice shakes. Emily's leg healed completely. There was no scar, no limp, just a memory and a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. She knew now that her voice mattered, that she didn't have to shrink herself to fit someone else's idea of who she should be. I watched her grow into herself, unafraid to speak up, unafraid to take up space. As for me, I learned that sometimes the only way to break the cycle is to walk away, even if it means leaving behind everything you thought you needed. I didn't regret it, not for a second. I had spent too many years trying to earn love that was always conditional, always just out of reach now. I had something better: peace, and the knowledge that I had protected my daughter, even when it meant standing alone. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been told to be quiet, to get over it, to stop making a scene, know that you're not alone. And know that it's never too late to draw your own line in the sand. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. And sometimes, that's the only way to truly be free. Sometimes I wonder how many of us have spent years waiting for our families to see us, to finally believe our pain or our truth. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself or someone you love? I know now that silence can be its own kind of wound, and that drawing a boundary is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. If you've ever felt invisible or unheard, I hope my story reminds you that you're not alone. What would you do if you had to choose between your family's approval and your own peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening to my story.